There we go. Okay, so that's started. And yes, we're going to look at Photoshop rendering of plans first, using a Revit plan, and then bring that into Photoshop to render it. And then also, I'll try and do an example of a section. So, in fact, before I go and go through all the steps with Revit and Photoshop, I'm just going to see if we can find some more examples online. I've got examples from students here as well, but it's always good just to see what we can find. Photoshop plan, render, interior. Let's spell interior. Yeah, that should be enough. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so you can see there are quite a few different examples that are fairly similar though, of Photoshop rendering of plans. And for interior design, I think it's one of those essential techniques. Do any of you have Louise for your any of your other classes? Louise is one of the teachers here who's a pretty experienced interior designer, and she does beautiful rendered plans. And I don't think she does any 3D rendering in her work. So she's a registered architect, and so she's gone all the way through. She did the advanced diploma here, then she went off and did her Bachelor of Architecture, then a Master's of Architecture, and then she's practicing architect now, and all without doing any 3D rendering. So all of her perspectives even were rendered entirely with Photoshop, entirely. And I've seen a lot of people go through uni, so in my Master's course, I see a lot of people come through with zero 3D rendering skills. They can set up a perspective, usually with SketchUp, and then they do every single bit of rendering entirely with Photoshop, but they're very good at it. So here you can see same idea with plan renders for interiors. You can get the textures and the shadows to look really good, and that's often enough. That's actually not Photoshop, that's mostly 3D, that's a bad one. But yeah, see some others. Okay, so yes, I'll go through the steps, but yeah, it's good just to see what you're trying to achieve. And yes, I've got here my ground floor plan, of course from Revit. So I'm going to duplicate that view, and I'll just choose the duplicate option. I'm not even going to worry about duplicate with detailing here, because I want to set up the any detailing that I have again anyway in my new view. So again, just duplicate view and then duplicate, and then I will. Oh yeah, I'll double check. So hopefully you can all still hear me, those of you at home. Is it editable once it's in Revit? Oh yeah, sorry Terry, that's just a follow on from 3ds Max before. No, it's a simple answer. You can't edit those imported 3D models, whether they're from 3ds Max or AutoCAD or any other 3D modeling program. Once they've been brought into Revit, you really can't do much with them, except assign materials if you've got layers, but that's about it. But it's not a big deal, because you can always go back to the program that you've made the thing in, if you're the one who made it, and change it there. Okay, so continuing on with this plan, so I've got my ground floor copied there, and I'm going to go and just then right click and rename this and call it ground floor. Well, let's keep it simple, PS for Photoshop. Oh, but I'm going to be doing the lobby, so I'll say lobby PS, and then I'll start by maybe just cropping the view to the area that I want to show, which is again around the lobby, of course. So I was going to bring the crop region in there. If you don't see the crop region, just check that it's visible and also active. So those two buttons there control cropping, but I'm sure most of you are used to that. And yeah, so again, I'll just continue bringing that crop region in and get it to go around the area I'm focusing on. Okay, so it's always good to do that first before you worry about hiding things, because you might find that you're going to crop out those things anyway that you're planning on hiding. But now that I've brought it in, you can see then that I've got some sections that I probably don't want to see. In the end, if I want to have a section that relates to this, I maybe would want this one. And so I might leave that there, but then the others I can just hide by element. Well, because if I hide by category, it'll hide all of the sections, and I probably do want to keep that one at least for the time being. It's far too, how can I say it? It's yeah, far too technical for the sorts of drawings you'll be doing. So what you might do is change the graphics of that section if we're going to keep it. So so there you can click on the little circular arrow button at the end to cycle through the different tails that you have for your sections. So these technical looking ones, again, are just too much for a presentation style drawing, which is what you'll be looking at. So you could set it to maybe have the L-shaped tail at the end on both ends, or you could even just set it to not have the tail and just have it showing as a line. So you know where the section is, but then you would put better graphics or simpler graphics on in Photoshop or InDesign. So that's what I'll do. I've just got a line there, and then I'll click on the little break symbol in the middle to add a gap, and then I can change the length of that line. So again, Revit's giving us the location of the section, but we'll do the graphics again in Photoshop. So there we are. And a couple of other little things. I've got the floor there not going around my wall. Obviously, I changed that wall after doing the floor, so I'll just go and fix that quickly. And there, I'm not going to be too fussy about it. I'm actually going to take the line of the wall there just by picking the center line. But I'll show you one little trick here. So I've gone there under the middle of the wall so that it hides the edge of my floor. But I then would want to see this floor come out where the threshold is. So I didn't go to the edge of the outside edge of the wall because I might then see the floor coming through that wall from the outside, and I don't want that. But I'm going to then again just draw some lines here around that opening where I want to see the threshold or the step there that's inside that door. And I'll turn thin lines off so that you can see those lines a bit more easily. And then I'll use split element, of course, to break this line. And did I get it? No, I missed it. Let's try again. Yep, got it then. And then trim the corner to join these lines together. That'll give me a fairly neat floor shape. And then I could do the same thing here to join the curves there. So I'll just draw some lines first to connect back to that edge. Okay, and then again split to break this line and trim. Show you what we're doing this many times. But doesn't have to see it again. There we are, tick to finish, and I've got a much better floor shape. And then here, when you asked this question, by this stage, when you've started to build up your model with lots of levels and different walls and floors probably already connected the way you want them to be connected, you'd normally say no here, because you don't want it to go and automatically connect walls to floors where you don't want them to connect. So typically when the model's fairly well developed, you start saying no instead of yes to this question. And there we are. Okay, so that looks much better. Even if we're not going to use the shaded version or the realistic version, even if we're just going to have it on hidden line, it's still important that you do that, because otherwise you get a line going through the plan there where we don't want it. And as always, when you do something you want to keep, make sure you save your work. Okay, so maybe to simplify it, I'll just bring this down a little bit more so I don't have to worry about that extra room there. That'll do. That's a better shape for my plan anyway. Maybe I want to get that whole staircase in though. It's a bit of a long corridor. Don't know. No, that's not good. No, I'll just get it to the end of the stairs. Yeah, that's it. So that's the area I want to show in my plan. And then before I go into Photoshop, I want to get a good idea of its size on a page. So it's not essential, but it's a nice little extra step. So here I'm just going to go and make a new sheet and basically guesstimate the size I think this plan will be on my final board. So actually I can just double check with you. So the flipboard that you're doing for your web page is, I was going to be in an unusual format, but have they given you a PDF? Do they want a PDF to then turn it into their flipboard format, or is it going to be some other format? I think it's a PDF. Yeah, normally it is. Yeah, I've done a few things similar on my own web page. So if it's a PDF, then hopefully I'll give you a page size. Have they mentioned that at all? So if you haven't heard, I'm going to try to get you to set up your assignments for this subject, and then hopefully for your decoration studio subject as well, using the same format as what you'll need for the website webpage. So maybe I'll just have a guess and say A3 is the size. Yeah. So I'll start with that. We can always change it. Okay, so that's the size I want my plan to fit within, and that's why it's helpful to have your page set up before you then export your plan. And now I can, again with this page, just drag my new ground floor lobby PS plan and put it onto this page. And then I can see that at 1 to 100, it's going to be very small on A3. And so therefore I would change the scale to 1 to 50. You can do that over in properties here while the viewport's selected, and that is a better size for the format we're using. And then I can fine tune it. So it's on the page now. You can see there the tag has gone down the bottom, but I don't want it anyway. So I'll go and, with the viewport selected, set that to no title. Is that something you've all been doing? Yeah, so hopefully you're all comfortable with that. So here setting no title just turns that label off. And then to adjust the cropping, I can now go to activate view and then bring that crop region in, and then also the section line needs to come across. So the position of that end of the section line actually determines the size of this view. So I'll bring that one over here, and that should be good. Yeah, so I now want to go back to my page. So I'll right click and choose deactivate view to then be able to select that viewport and then just recenter it on the page. And you can see there now it fits. It's not essential that your viewport fits within the page borders, but it does help. Okay, so that's my setup for the line work for Photoshop. So I'll save that. And then to go into Photoshop, we'll simply make a PDF. So again, this is hopefully a revision by now. You've probably all done this before. So file print, and then Adobe PDF. But have any of you had issues with the Adobe PDF printer crashing or just hanging and not seeming to work?
It was before the last project.
Yeah.
So I downloaded one you that.
Oh, good. Yeah, excellent. Yeah. So just watch out for that. Yeah. It's actually not a very good one. So on your own computers, if you get that Primo or Qt PDF, one of the others, they'll be better. The Microsoft one's okay for anything up to A3, but those others I think are better. So I'm just going here to setup, and then I'm changing the page size to match my title block, and then the zoom 100% option there. We'll just choose as well. And even though I've done this thousands of times, I still click preview most times just to make doubly sure I haven't forgotten anything. So have any of you wanted to have a border showing, like the viewport border? Sometimes people want it, so I'll just show you that. If you want the if you want that border to show, really the only option, there is a way of turning it on, but I won't go into that because it's it turns it on globally, and you normally don't want that. So here you can just go and draw detail lines. If you want to see a border, just draw a rectangle, and it will snap to the viewport border. And then, of course, when you go to print or make your PDF, you'll see those lines. I think I'll do it this time. Yeah. Oh, no, I did want to show you dynamic edge. No, so I won't. I want to show you dynamic edge. So, okay, that's just if you want the border, but it's not always necessary. It's entirely up to you. Sometimes it's nicer to not have a border because then you can have, again, what's called a dynamic edge, where we don't have just a rectangular frame around our image. So here, just go back to print. I've deleted my detail line, so again, now it doesn't have a border. And then I'll go and click print, and then OK, and it will make. Ah, you're kidding. The other issue with the Adobe is the licensing. Okay, so we'll Click OK, and then okay, so you need to then be logged in to an Adobe program. So I'm going to open up Acrobat DC, not Acrobat Reader, but Adobe Acrobat DC. And that should be the option to log in. The licensing, marketing people in these companies have obviously taken over and made our life a lot harder. So, yeah. Okay, so I'm signed in there. Don't know why I didn't pick that up, but anyhow, now that I've opened the program, hopefully it'll pick it up. So let's go back here, file print, and then all the setup's done. So I'll just click OK. And fingers crossed, there we go, now it's working. Okay, so I'm going to call this Carrington Lobby PS. That'll do. And I bet you anything it's going to hang, because this issue, I'm pretty sure, is a memory management issue. I won't bore you with all the details of that, but I've got some idea about software development, and that's something that a lot of developers are really bad at. And yeah, when programs hang like this, and you've got other things using a lot of memory, you can be pretty sure that's the issue. So at least this doesn't make the whole program crash. We can just click across here and then try a different program. So here we can go and use the Microsoft one, Microsoft Print to PDF. Luckily, because it only goes up to A3. Okay, so that should be okay though. I should say lobby plan anyway. Lobby yeah, plan, yes. There we go. And even though it's not as good as the Adobe one for most things, at least this one doesn't seem to crash. Okay, so now back into Photoshop, and I can simply open there the file I've just made. Okay, is it here? Oh no, it must be in here. There we are. Okay, so I'll just go over these options again. Most important one is crop to, and I think virtually every time you want that on media box. Then the other options should be there by default, but it's still worth checking them. So you want the resolution on 300 dpi and the mode all RGB color. I had some people in other classes being told to use grayscale. Don't ever do that. That's a really bad thing. If they're telling them to do that, that's just wrong, because it's not setting the image that you're opening. That's already grayscale. What it's doing is it's saying that going forward, you only want to use grayscale. And of course we want to add colors. So we need it in RGB mode to RGB color mode to be able to add different colors. If we choose grayscale here, we can't change or add any colors until we go and change the mode. So that's a good one to check. And I have seen for some reason when people set it to grayscale, it sets it as the default, and you've got to go and then change it back to RGB. So watch out for that one. And then the size shouldn't have to be adjusted because I've set the size, but it's not a bad idea just to check it in a unit that you're familiar with. In pixels, it's hard to understand what the measurements are, but if you go and check it in centimeters or millimeters, you can just make doubly sure that you have the page size you're expecting. So I can see there 420 by 297, I know is A3, so that's correct. And okay. Okay, so then you can see what you are usually hoping for, which is a transparent background behind the lines that are coming from the plant. That's the key idea. Even though I'm going to do a few in a minute that don't have a transparent background for different things, but again, you at least want one version of it with that cutout or transparent background, and then the lines coming in over that because they're vectors. So if you don't see it without the transparent background, that means that you haven't brought it in as vectors, and you don't want that. So again, that's the key idea. We've got transparent background because it's a vector file. When it's brought into Photoshop, it's rasterized it, so it's turned it into pixels. And if you zoom right in, of course, you're going to see the curve there. You're going to see that the curve, instead of being a nice smooth line, is a series of pixels. But at the resolution we're working with, that'll still look good. And yeah, so I've got my layer there, layer 1. I'll go and rename that and call it line work. And then I'll make a new layer. Click on the little plus here, drag it down underneath my line work layer, and I'll call that white background. And then just go to the edit menu and choose fill, and then set it to white. And that really doesn't affect the way it's going to print, but it makes it a lot easier to look at on the screen. Right, so we can see the lines more clearly there because it's easier to see them against the white background than it is against the checkerboards. All right, you can always toggle it on and off as well. And then I'll just go and add a new layer, and I'll call this flow. So I'm going to go and get some textures now for my flooring. So on the college computers, we have the material images folder on the P drive. So if you go to student resources or the P drive, EDU, DC, interior design, we're the only one. It's funny, we used to have all the different departments here, but we're the last holdout still using this. I don't know what the others are doing. Well, I think those departments are getting smaller and smaller, but we're not, so it's good for us. Anyhow, so here we are, just going into that folder, and then material images. So you've got all these different folders of material textures. It's good, but don't forget that you still should be searching online for most of your textures. This is just a starting point, even though there are thousands of image files in here. Got to remember, some of them are a bit old, so they're not the most high-res images, but also there are lots and lots of materials that you can possibly use. So you're always only going to have some that you've already got downloaded that you can make use of, but you'll nearly always need to search for others. So I've got some flooring here. This actually might be pretty good, Beechwood Natural. So I just wanted to see that before I try and use it in Photoshop. And I'll just show you the other one. James actually got a really good collection here that he's just added in this CG Axis folder. So here, these are all professional textures. So if you go into the wood folder there, the way it's organised makes it a little bit hard to navigate, but it's got thumbnails. So if you go down to the bottom there, you can see all these spheres, thumbnails of or showing you the way it would render. So maybe, well, for this space, I don't even know if wood's a great thing. I might even actually go to carpet. But again, just so you know how it works, if we go here to wood 1, that's the one I want to use. This is not the texture file. I then need to go up and go into the folder there that's called wood 1. And you can see there we've got a few different types of images. It's the first one, the one that says diffuse in the name that you should be using. The others are for different things. And it's a brilliant thing. So if you ever get to use a program that uses these normal maps, they're a really good option, and Lumion can use them. Revit can't, but Revit can use bump maps, so you have a height map for that. So that's, again, when you use these different images for different things, when you're rendering, you'll sometimes need those, but for basic rendering like we're looking at here, where we just want the colours or the actual photograph of the material, use the diffuse one. That's if you've got the option. So I'll, yeah, I might go then back and see if we have, I thought this one had carpet. Oh no, oh, fabrics, there we are. So fabric usually works pretty well for carpet, or some of them do. So we've got actually something here that might be pretty good. Beige fabric. Coming back around to beige. I know beige got a bad name for a long time, but I've seen some beautiful colour schemes done by this American interior designer who I really like, and he only uses brown and beige for every single space he does, and he actually does some beautiful spaces. I've forgotten his name now. I was just looking him up again the other day. I'll have to look him up, but he's a pretty well-known one. Just forgotten his name, but yeah, he does lots of stuff in New York and lots of apartments and things. No, he's American. No, but Greg Natali's similar. Greg Natali does sort of natural-ish finishes. He does that sort of high, you know, sort of almost glamorous. Yeah. But they're still, at least they're sort of high-spec materials, not the real, you know, harsh things that a lot of people do. And yeah, so his colouring as well, I think, is fairly natural. But yeah, the guy I'm thinking of does really natural sort of colours. And so it often ends up being brown and beige, and that's just how it is. But I know beige for a while had a really, really bad name. Anyway, so I'm going to do that though, because I'm, like I said, coming back around to it, unless I can think of another colour. I do like blue, green, not so much. But green's good for certain things. Actually, for this space, green could be all right. But yeah, let's just get something. So blue, yeah, blue's hard in spaces like this. So I think I'll just go with boring old beige. So you can see there, beige fabric 06. So I'll go and find that folder. And again, just get the diffuse map. So I can go and browse to it here, but to make it easier for me to find, I'm just going to select that and then right click and choose copy. And then while I'm in Photoshop, I'll be able to paste that to where I want it. So here, I'm just going to go File, Open. And so I've got my Carrington Hotel folder there. Now I could put it here, or here you can see I've got a textures folder already because Lumion made that for me. So you'll only have that if you've been using Lumion. You could always make one called textures for yourself, but again, Lumion does that for you if you're using the Lumion plugin. So I'm just going to put it there. So it's with my other textures that I've got for this project already. There we go. Okay, and so now I can open it. Right, so I just pasted it as I went to open it, but of course I can just continue then and open the file with Photoshop. And so then I can make a pattern. That's why you need to open it first in Photoshop. If you need to make a pattern, you open it. And have I shown you patterns very much before in Photoshop? No? Okay, good. Oh, this is normally, so when I teach like the intro Photoshop classes, this is normally one of the things I do at the beginning. To make a pattern is really easy. You simply go to the edit menu and then define pattern. Give it a name, so I'm going to call it beige fabric. And it's done. That easy. But it only works on that computer. To move it to another computer, you've got to use the CC libraries, and that's a bit more involved. But again, if you stick on the one computer, you'll always have it. So now, if I go back to my file with the floor plan, and then before I try to use it, I'm going to select the area that I want to apply it to. Now, yeah, I'll show you a couple of good tricks for this too. So I'm going to firstly just use magic wand selections. No, sorry, not magic wand, sorry, rectangular marquee selections, just to select the area where I want the carpet. There you can see I can go under the walls. So here, if I go, you know, from there and come over to, yeah, in fact, it'll be all down here, won't it? So I'll just take it all the way across. And in fact, I'm just going to say that even the hallways have the same carpet. So I'll just take it down, yeah, roughly to there, let's say. So notice I didn't have to worry about going around the walls. And then here again, I'll just hold down Shift and continue making those selections, just thinking about how the carpet will go into the doorways. I've gone too far there, so now still with the rectangular marquee, I can hold down Alt and deselect that area just to cut off the selection where it's gone past the line of the doorway there. So I might want a different material for this little room here. And the same up here. So there, I've got to decide where the carpet might finish. Well, let's say it actually continues into the next room as well. So now using Shift, I can add a rectangular selection to what I already have. Okay, so again, it doesn't matter that it's got this funny shape here where it goes under the wall because no one's going to see that. But then coming here to the doorway, I just maybe want to, again, expand that selection a bit so it's right on the edge of that, that opening or the line there. And again, just to keep it simple, I'll now go and add to the area here where the hallway is. So again, just holding down Shift to add, and we'll just click and drag to get that, again, going under the walls. It's fine. So you can see there, I've gone over the furniture and the stairs, but that's fine as well. We can come back and add those things on top. But of course, got to get the part there that I looked at in Revit with the curved wall. So to add to that, I could go and do lots of rectangular marquees and just keep holding down Shift and keep adding like so, and that would get you there in the end. But if you use the polygonal lasso tool, it's probably a bit quicker. So again, holding down Shift, I can then just keep adding more selection to what I've already got. Okay, and then I can just do another rectangular one to just get right in and get that doorway right. There, so that's the selection or the area where I want to place my carpet. And so I can go and add a pattern to that right now. But again, I'll show you a couple of little tricks. A good one is to put a colour into an area like that. That's black, so that's a bit strong. So maybe I'll go to my swatches and get a maybe a simpler colour, maybe this one. And that's actually not far off the carpet, so that's probably a good thing there as an extra option to show like a simple coloured version. But that also works as a selection. So if I now deselect that, if I go to the select menu and deselect, later, if I want to select that area again, I don't need to save the selection. If you haven't tried it already, you can save selections. So if I go back, I'll just undo deselect. So you have got the option of saving any selection in Photoshop, which can be really helpful, but it also can be difficult to manage. If you've got lots and lots of selections, you might find it's hard to know which one is which. So I often do this just to save a selection. I'll instead just fill it like I've done. And then you can always right click on that layer thumbnail and then select pixels to reselect the coloured area. So that's it there. Okay, so I've got it selected again, and now I can go and add a pattern to that. So to add a pattern, you can go to the edit menu and choose fill, and then choose the pattern option from there. Yeah. And I'll turn that script option off just so it does the pattern at its original size, and then I can choose there's my beige carpet or fabric. Click OK, and it will apply it, but it applies it at the original size. So if you're going to do a lot of rendering with Photoshop, I'd really recommend having a close look at the image size of the things you make your patterns with. And if you set that up a bit better, so in other words, if I'd made this smaller, then it would have come in smaller here as my pattern. So you can set the size of the pattern to be right from the beginning, but it does take quite a lot of technical understanding to do that comfortably and a lot of practice really. And again, the key there would be basically making it smaller, less pixels. So that's 4,000 by 4,000 pixels. Right, so do you remember the size of your images for your web page? Right, so if you've gotten there 1920 by 1500. So this pattern at the moment is much bigger than your final images will be. And that's why it's come in here so large. Right, so again, you can set them up so that they're the right size for what you need. But again, there's a lot of technical setup, and I don't want to go into that. So again, I make sure you know about that option. That's probably good when you are doing a lot of this work. But I'm going to show you the other option, which is to go to the layers. So here I've got my flooring layer. I can click on the little, it's not effects, what's it called? So I'm just hovering there, it should give us the name of it. Adjustment layer. Yeah, okay, so these are adjustment layers. So, yeah, so they're effects over here. They're similar, but they do something different. And then to the right, you've got that circle button with the, you know, the split in the middle. And so that's to add adjustment layers. So you can add patterns as an adjustment layer. And they give you a few options. So here, if I go again, click on that and then pattern. Now I've got the same patterns. If I click here, I can choose that same pattern. But then I also get the option to scale it. So I can reduce the size or increase the size. So that's too large, of course, but if we go down and make it much smaller, then it's going to look like carpet.
And how did you go to the adjustment layer?
Oh yeah, sure, again. Okay, so you've got to have your thing selected. That's really important. And then this button here. So
Yeah.
yep. So there, I'll just click on this one, and then oh, but look, before I do it, I'll just undo the fill. So I've got my colour there. Right. So I'm going to keep this flooring, and we'll call it flooring colour fill, just so you know what it is. So now I'm going to go and add my adjustment layer there. I'm going to choose pattern, and then from here I choose the pattern that I want. So I need to have the pattern already made, and then I can change the scale by dragging that slider. So on the fly, I can make the size different, and you can also change things like the angle, which here might be interesting to get carpet. That could be kind of cool. So yeah, you can play with that. Yeah, it's a bit jumpy, so there to get smaller, I might just type 6. So yeah. Okay, so let's try out some different angles. Yeah. Okay, so if I zoom in there, it's going to look a little bit different. But I actually don't mind that. Okay, so so again, that's an adjustment layer, and it does a few tricky things there. It uses a layer mask to do the cutout. So you can see that over on the right. So just make sure you're aware of that when you're using adjustment layers. But if you find it's all too much, if it's difficult for you to adjust that further, and you'll see it can be sometimes, I'll show you a good trick. So there, again, we've got my adjustment layer, that's the pattern, and then below it is the original flooring layer with just the colour fill, which I didn't type properly, but you know what it is. So the trick is, if you want to get rid of all of these extra options, select both of those layers, and that's why I made this first layer. And you see now how it's helpful. If I go now to layer and just merge layers. Does some pretty cool things. So what it's done there is it's turned off, or it's merged the alpha, not the alpha, the layer mask, and the pattern. The pattern was actually a separate thing with my original coloured selection. Right? And if you don't do that setup, it won't work that way. So then I can do some more little tricky things. So again, I can go now and adjust the, well, opacity is an obvious one to reduce the brightness. But I'll show you some other options. So I can go here to layer and then add an adjustment layer from the menu here, or I can do it from down here, but I just want to show you, you've got basically the same options when you go to the menu. Right, but funnily, you don't have the one I showed you, pattern, but you've got the others. I don't think pattern's there yet. Don't know why they don't have pattern here, but it's just one of those things. I think they consider it a fill layer. Yeah, that's why. Okay, so again, we can get to them from there, or you can go down here. Okay, so you've got then, go away. So you've got then, what's it done? Vitals, I don't want that, sorry. That was just the computer doing it without telling me. So some that I use all the time would be levels, hue saturation, Photo filters, they're all good adjustments. You all know about adjustments under the image menu, I'm sure. Do you? Or that's something you do? Okay, so I'll just show you those then, if you haven't done these. So when you go to the image menu and then choose adjustments, let's say we go brightness contrast, that's an easy one. I can make it brighter and then make it maybe less contrasting. But when I do that, it's then baked into the layer. So if I want to change it again, I've got to go back to adjustments, brightness contrast, and I can try and get it back to how I had it, like this. But sometimes that's impossible, because let's say I make it really bright. I'm going too far there. All right, so I've made that adjustment. I made it super bright. Now, if I go back to their brightness contrast and I try and make it dark, here it's doing a pretty good job, but let's actually see if we go even further. So I'm going to make it even brighter, just to see if I can take out most of the colours. So now let's see if I go back and then brightness contrast again. It's actually, for once it's, oh yeah, let's use the legacy one just so. There we go. Okay, so you can see now that I can't get that colour information back because I took it out. I made it too bright, and so then it was basically nearly white. So now when I make it darker, it's making white into grey. So that's why you'll see as you use Photoshop more and more, that you'll tend not to use adjustments from the image menu, adjustment layers. So if I instead do a new adjustment layer and again use brightness contrast, yeah, we'll just click OK. So notice it's added this layer and I've got the same settings there. I can increase the brightness, maybe reduce the contrast. Okay, so that's a live setting, so I can always come back. If I want to adjust it, I can then just double click on this to get my settings again. I don't need to go and choose adjustments again, and I can make it brighter still, or I can bring it back to how it was. So it's non-destructive editing. If I decide I don't want it at all, I can just click on the light bulb to disable that adjustment. So it's a much better way of adding adjustments. So another one, levels, I use that all the time. So again, layer, new adjustment layer, levels. So levels are great for tightening up an image that has, you know, doesn't have enough contrast or sometimes has too much. It's sort of like contrast. So I can really soften this and then maybe bring this up to make that a bit stronger. Lots of things you can do. And you can stack them up. So I can go and make another one and maybe hue saturation. And that way I can reduce, I think it's a bit too colourful, so I can reduce the colourfulness by reducing the saturation. Like so. All right, so again, notice these are all just stacked up now in my layers panel, and I can always disable any. You can see they all have a, I think, pretty good effect. Yeah, okay, so then things, I can put in the fills for these cabinets. So we could make them coloured, but sometimes you just want them to be white. You don't always need to show the material of these things. So if you just want them to be white, like in the past they would have been just like that, and didn't show all of your material textures in a plan. So I'm just going to make sure that selection's in the right area. I know you can use magic wands to get these things as well, so I might show you that. You can use magic wand here, holding down shift, I can click inside there. Ah, that didn't work. Okay, so there with the magic wand tool, I'm just going to make sure sample all layers is ticked. And I might just turn the pattern layer off so that it'll let me go inside the, oops, sorry, I forgot to hold down shift. So there, it'll pick up the rectangle. If I had the pattern on, it would have picked the texture there. I'll show you what will happen there if I do that. I get a selection like that. So it's good to look at your layers when you're using Magic Wand. And so yeah, so I'll make a new layer for the furniture. And then again, you can just start by filling it with white. Well, I'm sure you'll realise you can put a texture in if you find like wood or whatever this material would be. You can of course add that. And then what I really wanted to show you there is that even with this white fill, now I can easily add a shadow. So here in the layer panel, I've got my furniture layer selected. And then again, here we just go to the bottom, but this time to effects, and then drop shadow. So then again, if you like another live setting, it stays there. If I want to disable it or change it, I can always come back and adjust this. So there you can see, if I move this over to the side, it's showing me how the shadows look, and I can change the angle, like so, the distance, and it's good just to see as you adjust these settings, what the effect is in your viewport or in your drawing. The spread basically probably works the opposite to what you think. The lower it is, the softer it is, the higher it is, the harder it is. It's one of these odd things. I won't go there. It's actually the way it should be, but it's just a bit hard to explain, but you can see it graphically when you adjust the setting there. Size works the other way. So when size is lower, it's harder. When it's higher, it's softer. So I normally want a bit of softness on the shadow, so I normally bring that one up a bit. And that's enough. But then the shadows are quite dark, so I'm going to reduce the opacity there, just make them a bit softer. There we go. And normally want the blend mode on multiply there. Okay, so there we are, nice easy shadows. And I see people all the time trying to render plans in 3D in Revit just to get things like these shadows. And there's no need, again, because Photoshop makes it pretty easy. You can do the same thing with the line work layer actually. So if I get that line work layer and just do the same thing. So effects, drop shadow. And that's okay, but you can see there that the lines actually look a bit rough now because of the shadows. So that's not going to be good. So to get that to work, you really need then to have the walls put onto another layer or make an extra layer with just the walls and get rid of all the lines from your stairs and doors. Kind of, yeah. Yeah, I'll show you. No, I'll show you. Okay, so it's a bit tricky. So I'm going to duplicate this line work layer. So that's, you can see that layer at the top. I'll just duplicate it. And I'm going to drag that new layer, line work copy, underneath my original line work layer. And then, now look, technically we can put a mask on that just works with the drop shadow, but this is probably a bit easier to understand. So again, I've got that copied layer, and now I'm going to turn off the original layer on top, and I'll make this one line work shadows. And then I'm going to add a layer mask. So that's this button here. Next to effects, you've just got that button there, add layer mask. And you can see it's added this white thumbnail next to my layer. Then I'm simply going to select the things that I don't want. So basically all of the lines here. And I'm just going to hold down Shift to keep adding to my selection. I'm not going to be super precise here, because you don't need to be. So here I'm just getting all of this, anything that's a line and not a wall, I basically need to highlight. And then so that I don't have to do it all in one go, I'm going to go and use the paint bucket tool now and just make sure I've got black set as my foreground color and fill in those selections. So what that's doing is hiding the things that I've just painted in black. That's how a layer mask works. So yeah, or black hides things basically in a layer mask. and then white reveals them. So you'll see over here, as I add more things, I'll have these black areas in that thumbnail, and that's showing me the area that's hidden.
It's not like,
You could just delete them, but you'll see later when you go and make changes, it's actually better to have it as a mask. Layer masks are one of those things that sound complicated when you explain them, but they're actually quite easy to use once you get used to it. So again, I've got that selection there, and again, with my paint bucket, I'll fill it, and then just keep going like that. There's not much to mask out. The stairs are nice and easy. That's a big rectangular thing, so I can just mask all of that in one go. That's all of that area. Again, just mask it. And then the little bits here, that does make a difference. So I've got to get all of that. Again, not being super precise because it's just for the shadows. And if you think this is hard work, this is actually how most people in the past have created rendered floor plans. They don't, get it all in 3D. It's just manually like this in Photoshop. It's a bit of a slow old process, but it's still faster than when we used to render and do all our drawings by hand, which is what people used to do. Okay, so again, that's nearly all done now. So just got to get these last few lines. Okay, I'm trying not to use shortcuts because you won't see them if I do. So I'm doing it all with clicking buttons on the screen, which is a bit slower than I'd do it normally. There you go. So really just clearing up all of those individual lines because I don't want shadows coming from them. Even the window, don't know, actually that one's, actually I'll just do this side. The inside I can go on. Keep. Yeah, okay, so that's the, oh yeah, so it's still a door, I think. So this is, again, just the things I want to cast a shadow. Yeah. Okay, so now I can bring back my original layer. The lines there are still there. And now I can add a drop shadow to this layer, to the line work shadows layer, and see how much better that is. So that's giving me shadows just from the walls. And it's got the same setting as I've got on my furniture. But it's now going over the furniture. Right, so what we have to do there is, oh yes, not too bad. I was putting the furniture layer up above the line work shadows layer, and that solves it. Bingo, done. There we go. Okay, so that's how you do, well, that's one way of doing Photoshop shadows. A lot of people don't even use that automatic method. A lot of people just paint in the shadows with the brush tool. And that works as well, but it takes time. But in the past, I mean, those examples I showed you online, I'd say most of those would have used that method. These don't look like drop shadows. There's maybe some, but I think most of that is painted. So they've just manually gone around with the brush tool. But I will show you the other approach as well with Revit. We can now go back and turn shadows on and adjust the settings. But you can see here it gives you lots of messy shadows, so it's not going to give you everything, but sometimes people like to get these shadows. So you just would then make a PDF of this. I won't demo it, but I'm sure you can work it out. You make a PDF here, then bring that in as an extra layer in Photoshop and put the opacity down, and you can get those directional shadows. I think directional shadows can be overkill if you make them too dark. Here they're not too bad because they made them pretty faint, but they're really not necessary. People think you always need directional shadows because you're used to getting them in Revit. You know, these, when I say directional, I mean these ones here where it's clearly got an angle coming from a wall or something. But again, I think in a plan it's not really necessary, and you'll see a lot of the good rendered plans don't really use directional shadows. They're softer, and again, drop shadows are good for that. Yeah, so that's all I'll do with that. And then The final thing is then getting some more overlays from usually from photographs. So things that you might be adding to your space. So let's say you want chairs. Search for chair top view. So you won't always find the exact chair that you want, but you'll find lots, right? Because people do this work all the time. And in fact, you're probably more likely to find views like this than you will be to find full 3D models. So sometimes you've got to compromise and use a 3D model of your chair for your perspectives that isn't what you want, and then you might have more luck finding what you want with a view like this. So I suppose it's fairly traditional space, so let's try this one. Okay, so I'll go and just download that image from there and save it. It's fairly easy to bring that in, but I'll sort of show you quickly. Yeah, I'll stick it in textures. So I'm going to call it top, so chair. Top envelope. Okay, so just like the other things, we open that first before trying to bring it in. So open that file. So it's not cut out. It's got a white background. So I'm going to use the magic wand there just to select all of the white. But notice it's only got this part because that's all connected. So I'm going to turn contiguous off and then just try again. And now it's got all of the white parts going around. You've sometimes got to check that it's not getting bits on the inside because you might have white there inside the chair. And if that happens, just go and use the rectangular marquee and hold down Alt to deselect any of those extra parts. And then I'll make a new layer. I'll duplicate the background layer just so I can then drag the new copy up to the top and turn off the background. And then again, while I'm still on that new layer with the chair on it and my selection, I can then just delete here, edit clear, same thing. And again, I've got the checkerboard. If you're fanatical like me about cutting out, not maybe something like this, but if it was say a person or a plant, I would spend a lot more time getting the edge exactly right with the cutout. But for things like this, it's going to be fairly small and you do have a white background, then you can just use the magic wand to cut it out. So now I'm going to go select inverse. You could even just select the whole thing with a rectangle, but this works. And then edit, copy, and then back into my original file. Of course, edit. It's put it on its own layer, which is probably good. We can merge it with the furniture layer later if you really want to, but for now, I'll just leave it on this layer and we'll call it chairs. Okay, and so then to adjust it, the good old shortcut, Control-T, but I'll do it from the menu so you can see, free transform. But again, Control-T is the shortcut you use all the time. Right, and it's going around the selection, that makes it easy, so I can then just scale that. Remember, with the new version of Photoshop, you don't hold Shift anymore to keep it proportional, you just stretch it. It does that by default. And then we can place the chairs, so I might put some along here. And but of course rotate them. This time I'll use Shift to snap it to 90 degrees. And then tick to copy, so tick to confirm, and then to copy, remember the shortcut to copy in Photoshop. So you wouldn't copy and paste here. You hold down Alt to make it copy. So Alt, if you don't know, in Adobe programs is the copy option key. So now with Alt, I can just click and drag to get copies of my chair. It's weird. There is a way of putting them all in the one layer, but I always forget, and with the new version, they changed the shortcut key. So there you can see it's making a layer for each chair, but in a moment, I'll put them all onto the one layer. Okay, so then I can, again, see over here the 3 layers. So I'll just hold down Shift to select all 3, and then go to Layer, Merge Layers. So just take the copy out of the name. And then like all the other things, I can apply a drop shadow to that layer now as well. And there we are, much better. Okay, and again, sometimes effects would be good there as well. So that might be a bit too strong. If you want that, it's fine, but you know, sometimes you want it to be a bit softer. So we can, you can try opacity, but that's going to make the chair see-through. Sometimes you'll get away with it, but it's bringing the carpet through that chair. So instead of doing that, I'll apply a so I'm just losing it. It's an adjustment layer, sorry, not an effects. So here we go, adjustment layer, and then levels. It's a really good one, and I can use that to adjust my chair. But notice that it's also adjusting the carpet. So that's the final thing I want to show you. Maybe we'll have to do the sections later. So that's what I want with the chairs, but I don't want the carpet because I've already got an effect on the carpet. Right, so in fact, I don't mind the way the carpet looks now, but again, I just want to show you how to make the adjustment layer only work on the chairs layer. So the secret is you go to the settings, the same ones I just had. I've closed them just so I can show you how to open it again. We double click on this thing next to the layer thumbnail. So there's my levels again, and then use this option to make it only work on the layer below. So now that levels adjustment layer is only working on the chairs layer. Okay, so I'll just go back and show you. So now if I adjust the levels, so again, you can see only the chairs changing. So levels is great for balancing and tightening up your levels or your lighting. You know? And your eyes tell you when it's right or what you want. There we are. And so you can see now this layer is underlined, showing me that the adjustment layer is only working on that layer below. Yeah, and if you think that's a lot of layers, it's actually not. So you'll see people who use Photoshop all the time will have stacks and stacks of layers that just go on and on. I've had files with close to 100 layers. Not unusual. That's just how it is. Yep, sure.
Related to this,
yep.
Just a general one. How? Sorry, it's like how do you make tilings look in render like tiling? It's the grouts. How do you add the grouts?
Oh yeah, okay. So that's what I can tell you. So the question is about tile materials. So I'll just show you. So yeah, so in the sort of Revit. Okay, so let's go to a space where we want some tiles. Okay, well, there's two things. Firstly, if it's only going to show in Photoshop, so let's say it's for a bathroom, right? You may not need to render your bathroom in perspective, right? So if it's only going to be for a plan, I'd recommend just doing it in Photoshop.
Because you can do what you can draw.
You can just have a tile. So if you have here, I'll just do one here first. Okay, so let's say I want to make this area tiled. Okay, so we go and find a tile texture. So back into here, I'll use the CG Axis one because we should have some good tiles, floor tiles. So I'll go down and see what the thumbnails look like, and there will be plenty of good tile materials here. So these are great, but you'll see they're much simpler tiles if you look in other places. These are more detailed ones.
Well, what if you just have an image of, let's say, one tile?
Yeah, sure. So, well, normally you want a couple. So I'll just search for some as well. Okay, so I'll just go here, tile texture. Now with tile textures, you don't need to search for seamless because tiles are pretty much always going to be seamless. Because they have seams. So here I can pretty much use any of these things. But yeah, normally more than one. If you have the one tile repeated, it does look repetitive. So it's good to at least have 4 or even more like this one. So maybe I'll get one of these that has like, what is it, 16? Yeah, I'll get a marble. Yeah, commission. And then we'll do this both in Photoshop and in Revit. So I'll save this now and put it in the same place as all my others. I'm just going to call it tile texture, but it's marble, isn't it? Pretty sure it's marble. Yeah, marble. Okay, so now I'll, again, like I've been doing, open that in Photoshop. Oh, it's a big one. Okay. So it's thinking, please don't crash on me. It's just struggling with the memory, so I'm going to see if I can wake it up. Here we go. So I'm going to save my file in case. Yeah. Okay. So now I'll just try again to open that. Yeah, I think I've had an issue with that file, maybe. So let's try again. There we go. Okay, so that's working. Okay, so here I can just do what I've done previously. I can either just copy and paste it, or I can make a pattern. So I'll make a pattern because it's quick and easy. So again, edit, define pattern, and that's okay. Tile, texture, marble. And so then now back into Photoshop, and so into my other file, and then I can select the area that I want to fill. Okay, so again, it doesn't matter if I go under the walls a little bit, it'll all be hidden by the walls. And I'll just make sure I'm on the layer below the line work and maybe below my furniture as well, because the floor is, of course, under the furniture. And actually, I want it even under the line work that I've got for the shadows layer. So I'll just choose this, yeah, the adjustment layer that I've got for the pattern fill underneath. That's a good spot for it. So now again, I can just go, to the blend, sorry, not blends, the adjustment layers, and go to pattern, and then go down here and choose my new tile pattern, and then adjust the scale here. So that's actually probably not far off. Maybe I'll try 12 actually. That's pretty good. But let's just try adjusting it a bit more. 10. Yeah. So you can type in the numbers there if the slider isn't working for you exactly. So 9.
Because this is the way you can adjust the scale, right? Especially with fill.
Yeah, that's right, to adjust the scale. Yeah, that's right. With fill, it's hard. But with this, it's easier. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, and you can see that looks a lot better. And then also in Photoshop, we can adjust it further. So I can go and adjust the brightness and do other things like that. But it's still good to know the Revit option as well. Okay, so I'll again just save my file because it's probably going to be struggling a bit. So yeah, so to make it a Revit texture, well, I've got a different thing there already. So I might just move that somewhere else. I want to keep that, but I want to put it. Oh no, that's what I've already done. So I'll just delete that one and show you. I've shown you this a few times, but I'll just show you one more time. So here again, using the floor tool in Revit, and I'll just draw a rectangle in that area for my floor shape. So notice I've got a floor there already, and that will be underneath this floor, because now I'm going to go here and just with edit type check my floor thickness. I've already made this floor to be a nice thin one, just 15 mil thick. So I'll duplicate it though, because that floor that I've been using already has a different material. So I'm going to call this tile marble. and then I'll go and edit the structure. And again, you can see it's already 15 mil, but it's got the carpet material, so I'll go and browse and make a new tile material. So I'll just make a brand new material. So here, down here, I'll go create new material. It's called default material, so I'll go and rename that, and we'll call it tile marble. And then over here, go to appearance, right click, and then replace. And go to the appearance folder, expand it, and you will see a few different options for tiles. You've got the ceramic folder that has tiles, but they're ceramic tiles. Mine is stone, so I'm going to go here to stone. And then if you expand that, you've got marble, and we've got all the marble materials we can start with. So I'll just choose really any, doesn't matter. Any, as long as it says stone marble there for the category, you can use any of them, because we're going to change the texture. So that gives you a good starting setup for that sort of material, because it's got the finish that we want and all the other things you'd have for a marble tile. But then I need to change the image to the one that I've been using. So if you click on this, that's just the file name, and then I can browse to the folder where I've saved my texture. So I kind of see subjects, there we go. Carrington textures, tile texture marble. Okay, so it's obviously got that tile image now applied to this material, but I've got to then check the size. So I'm going to click on the thumbnail there of the image and then confirm size. So it's amazing how big tiles are getting now. You can get these massive large format tiles which look really good, but have any of you tried them in real life? This is something I've just been looking at. Watch out for the large tiles, because you can't use them everywhere. But look, if you can, they look beautiful, but there's a lot of involved in those large tiles, and they crack if you don't have the right foundation for them. So I'm going to say maybe this one. Well, what sort of size tiles have you been thinking of?
Several ones with the floor tiles, which are quite large. I think.
Yep.
Oh
wow, gee. Yeah, gee, they're the big ones. Yeah.
Big slabs.
Yeah.
But also, what I'm thinking, smaller tiles, making them bar and.
Yeah. 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 Well, let's just say as an example, maybe I want these to be 400 square. Yeah, that's a pretty standard size.
But then obviously that's 400 by 400 times 1, 2, 3, 4.
Exactly.
5.
Exactly. Oh, by 4. Yeah, because the extra one's just to show you how it joins. So it's 4. So the image is from here to here. So we've got 4 tiles in each direction.
Yeah.
So if we want each tile to be 400 mil, like you're saying, it's 4 times 400 mil.
Yeah.
So 1600 for the length, for the width and the height. So that's now going to be exactly 400 mil in Revit. That's it. I'm not going to worry about bumps or relief or anything like that. Just the image is enough. So that's it. I'll click OK, and then OK, and OK. And again, checking my height offset there is also 15 mil, so it raises it by the thickness of this floor above my previous floor. Tick to finish, and we can see it. So that's really for rendering. Like I've been showing you, you can probably get a better look in Photoshop for the plan.
You don't have a tile pattern in what tile texture that you look for in Google. You just have a single tile.
Yeah.
Could you still make like a tile?
Oh yeah, you could do it.
Sets the graphs.
Well, I wouldn't worry too much about the graph. No, but if you, there is there's 2 options.
It doesn't look like tile anymore.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll show you. Yeah, sure. Yeah, okay, so you've got 2 options. So in Revit, you do have what's called a procedural tile. So here you'll see there is an option to use the tiles setting. That does have an option to put grout in, but that's a bit technical, and sometimes it's not really the best way of doing it as well. It's good sometimes if you need to do, if you like doing things with formulas and numbers, that can be a good option. But I'm going to show you a more direct way. So instead of doing that, well, what you might do is set up in Photoshop. So here I've got my thing with all the tiles, of course, but I'm just going to make one that's similar to what you're talking about. So I'm going to get this selection here. Right, and then I'll just go and make a new image from that. So I'm just going to copy this and then make a new image. Right, and notice it defaults to clipboard when you've got something selected. So that way I can get a new image that's the same size as my selection and just paste it in, and I've got one tile without any grout. So that's what you might start with. Then all you do is go and add the grout to this. So I'll just show you what I mean. So, okay, so let's say we're in Revit and we're using that image. Okay, so we've got the, again, or edit type. Yeah, I'll just duplicate it and make it marble, version 2. And I'll go and get my material and I'll duplicate that as well. And I'll call it marble version 2 as well. And then back to here, let's go back in Photoshop and make sure I've got that file saved so it's ready to be used. So, yeah, so let's call it tile, no grout. That'll do. And so that I can use it in Revit, I've got to save it again as a PNG. That's just saving a copy. And so now back into Revit, I can choose the file name there and I'll set it to my new image that just has the one tile. And then I'm going to set the size to the size of a tile. So that's going to be 400 mil. Right, and then, okay, so it's not very good because it does have a bit of the grout left because I didn't crop it. That's because I didn't crop it enough. I need to just bring that in a bit more. So that's just part of the image. Yeah, well, let's see, but see, notice how when it's so repetitive that it gives you that sort of weird aliasing effect.
Yeah.
Where you get the repetitions and they just don't look great. Okay, so bring this in a bit more. Okay. Yes, I'll save it again. Okay, so I'm just going to tell Revit that that's been changed. Yeah. Sometimes it just picks it up, but yeah, most of the time. Yeah, so the only reason we can tell that it's repeating is because of the same pattern. I suppose there is still a bit of the seam there, but we'd want more than that if you really want to see the grout. So what you do then to put the grout in is simply in Photoshop, I'd use canvas size. So here if I go image canvas size, or would I just, no, so I won't even, that's I'll show you. So if you go canvas size, we can make it a little bit bigger all the way around. So I could make it it's 499, so I'll make it 515 and 515 for the other one too. Keeping that centered. Now it's going to add a bit of white all the way around. And that's on the background. Oh, how annoying. So, well actually that should still be a cutout, so I can get my background copied and maybe just fill that with So,
let's say black grout.
Yeah, black grout. Yeah, I'll do that. Yep, sure. Yep, so I'll just fill it with, black. Yep, no worries. Okay, so I've just made that layer black, and there's a black border now going around. It's hard to see because of the screen, but there is. Okay, so I'll save that. So I'll save as, give it a new name, tile with ground. And then I can go and save a copy again as PNG. And then, of course, back in Revit, change the image over to the new one. All right. So that works, yeah. Exactly, yeah, yeah. So for rendering, it's good, yeah, yeah. But again, you could use the same thing in Photoshop. So we could apply that to the plan here as well, using a pattern. Exactly the same image.
And so you meant image,
Oh, the canvas size thing, yeah. So canvas size just lets you make the image size bigger without stretching the what's there already. Yeah. Yeah, border. That's good. I'm saying.
15 then means is that equal to 15 mil?
No, that was just in pixels. And when you're working with things like textures, often you just want to think in pixels. Because the size is irrelevant. You can make it as big or as small as you like in centimeters, and you're often going to resize it quite a lot. But the pixels is the key thing because that sets your resolution. Yeah. So yeah, that's it. So that's probably enough for today with Photoshop, because otherwise I'll be showing you all day. And I just want to give you some time to actually try these things. And then maybe next week I'll do a demo on rendering a section. I did want to look at today. The other thing I didn't get to do, which I wanted to, but we'll still do it next week, is making things a bit more sketchy. So you've got lots of great options for that. I'll just mention them briefly because you can start to set these up during the week. You've got things like watercolor brushes. Right, so these are special effects. So we've got wet media, might have some things there, but search for watercolor brushes. So I'll do this on my own computer where I can add them. I can't add them on, maybe we can add them here actually, but it's much easier if it's on your own computer. So these aren't too bad though. The default ones are getting better all the time. But again, you can definitely search and find even better brushes than that. So watercolor brushes, and I'll definitely give you some demos how you can use brushes like this for especially sections. They look really good, but even plans you can do some good things. And then we might even have a look at using some filters to get different effects. A lot of those are pretty straightforward. Those mostly just trial and error. And then yeah, again, I'll try to apply it to section. Maybe we'll even be able to do some lighting effects. See how we go for time though. That can be a bit of a hard thing, but yeah, it still would be good if you can try that. Yeah, but yeah, really important that you understand the importance of Photoshop for rendering. That's all I'm trying to get across. And then the other thing we've got to maybe go a bit further with is doing these things in perspective. So I'll definitely try to do it next week with a section at least. But I'll just show you, well, I think you've seen already some perspectives rendered with Revit initially, but then with a lot of adjustments in Photoshop. So I should have some here. Let's open them up at least. So that's this one. There you go. Oh yeah, that's not complete, but you can see there at least I've got, oh no, sorry, that's just shadow Revit, so that's not good. So I've got some others here. I'll show you, this is a section. Go to the next way. Here we go. So rendered sections, that hasn't had much done with Photoshop, but a little bit's been done there. And then, but again, you can definitely get 3D rendering combined with your Photoshop rendering. Sorry, this should be none of our. Oh, sorry, it's not 20, no, sorry, it's 2020. Sorry, we just had subject. Here we go. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so so again, you can, I think I've shown you before, you can add things to your perspectives, of course, using Photoshop, and silhouettes are a great example, but yeah, lots of other things. So I'll try and do that too. And then, so the final thing I just mentioned is InDesign. So is that something, is that how you're all doing your layouts?
Yeah.
With that, but we'll essentially be placing images and then text with InDesign. I normally give out some things on putting layouts together as well. But again, we can do that next week as well. I sort of see, is there a question coming?
Oh, yes, Danny.
Oh, yes, sure, sure.
Oh, yeah, I'm trying to type in the question, but you're now looking, so
Yeah, sure.
I better ask. Can you show me how to do the lighting? Like before, you just open the section and then the perspective that is long curve line, like long line.
Yeah, so that's all done with Revit or Lumion.
Oh, Revit or Lumion, that long line with the ceiling, that kind of lighting.
Yeah,
Like,
this one.
yeah.
Yeah, so remember how I've been showing you that you can use glowing materials. So in Revit, you set self-illumination or emissivity. So in some materials, it'll say, let's just get another one.
Can you rendering like look like lighting? So is it like a reflection or something?
Yeah, it's a light. It makes the material work like a light.
Oh.
So, yeah, so this tick box here. So the demos I did a couple of weeks back, I showed this. So yeah, so it's that self-illumination option to make it work like a light. So
I understand.
So I can turn it on, and then you set the brightness here. So you'll see this will turn into a light. There we are. And that's how I've done that one. That's a Revit render. That's with the cloud.
So self-illumination comes up in the clouds?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, it does. Oh yeah. Yeah, it does. Yeah. Yeah. It's only with Revit, with draft and medium, with the teapot render, that it doesn't. Yeah, cloud. Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so cloud renders, yeah, they work really well for that. So this is cloud render, of course. And then Lumion as well has a different approach. So with Lumion, you use the materials, again, this is from the demo a couple of weeks back. So there, so this one here, that's a Lumion material. I think the Lumion ones, if you're doing lots of glowing things, lots of light boxes, they do work better in Lumion.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, Lumion's set up for that. Yeah, they work okay in Revit, but it works really well in Lumion because Lumion is made for these special effects like you know, glowing materials and water and fire and all those things. Did I show you the fire? Fire and water?
No.
I know some people wanted that. So yeah, so this is where Revit really falls down. It's no good at this. So it's actually okay. If it's just for glowing materials, you can get it to work in Revit. But here you can see more glowing materials there in Lumion, and I think they're better than what you get with Revit. But then also with Lumion, you can have other things that Revit just can never do, like fire and water. So if you've got lots of that in your design, that's a really nice thing to try in Lumion. So here I can add fire. Oops. Fire. Let's get one of these. That easy. And it looks like fire. Yeah. So that's where Revit's really, I mean, Lumion's really strong at all those special effects type things. It's made for that. I mean, they're typical gaming engine things, so Lumion's good at that. But again, it's the style of rendering that a lot of people don't like. So if that's the case, then you know Revit still can give you really good results. But yeah, fire and water are very difficult with. I think I've showed you in one of the demos earlier as well. Water can work in Revit. So it's horses for courses, but again, they definitely have their own strengths and weaknesses. Yeah, so don't want to go too much further than that, but yeah, let me know if you've got any other questions, and otherwise I'll finish it up there. Oh, so do you want to have a look at yours individually? Yeah, I'll come over. Yeah, okay, so I'm going to finish the recording there. Unless anyone else has got any questions. Yeah, that's I think plenty for today though. I've got the recording. Dave's still recording. Awesome. Good.